She possessed the world at her feet, bathed in luxury and privilege. But, in a moment of pure petulance, she crushed the dignity of a simple man as if he were dust. Now, on the solemn stage of a courtroom, Judge Caprio would weave a web of morality designed to crumble the empire of her vanity. Prepare for a judgment where the value of character far outweighs the gleam of gold. The air within the grand courtroom hung heavy, almost palpable, saturated with the scent of aged oak, generations of dust, and a faint, clinical whisper of disinfectant that futilely attempted to mask the raw tension permeating every corner. Cold morning light, thin and unforgiving, pierced the tall, arched windows, casting stark illumination upon the dancing motes of dust and the hushed, expectant faces gathered below. At the epicenter of all attention sat Isabella Montenegro, a woman in her early 20s, radiating a polished arrogance that seemed to gleam from her very pores. Draped in a silk power suit, a garment that undeniably cost more than most people earned in a year, her posture was one of calculated boredom, reclining slightly against the hard bench of the defendant. Her thin lips curved into a near imperceptible smile, a private amusement suggesting the entire proceeding was a minor inconvenience on her packed social calendar. She absently toyed with a diamond bracelet, each facet catching the dim light, while her vivid blue eyes wandered around the solemn chamber, assessing it with a detached disdain. In her mind, this was merely a stage, and she, the unquestionable star. A few yards away, opposite her, sat Mr. Manuel. His hands, bearing the indelible marks of a lifetime of honest labor, rested on his knees, gnarled, wrinkled, yet imbued with a quiet dignity. He wore a simple suit, impeccably clean, its careful creases betraying its frequent, respectful use. His brown eyes, tired but unyielding, steadfastly avoided Isabella's gaze. Manuel carried no fervent hope of a resounding victory, but rather the heavy, profound dignity of a man deeply humiliated, now seeking at least a flicker of moral justice. To Isabella, he was a mere phantom, a stain on her imagined Persian carpet of privilege. "He's just a janitor, Daddy, a nobody. What good is a nobody's dignity?" That cruel, dismissive phrase, uttered by Isabella, now echoed in the collective memory of everyone present, a sharp hook piercing the attention of every soul in the room. Judge Caprio, an immovable pillar of justice on his elevated bench, absorbed the unfolding drama. His eyes, deep and keenly perceptive, missed no detail, no subtle nuance of the silent battle of egos that had just begun. The silence of the courtroom, pregnant with unspoken accusations, began to ripple, pulling the present back into the past, into the gilded halls of a memory as sharp as broken glass. Months earlier, the air in the grand ballroom of the Volkov Palace Hotel held a different kind of tension, one cloaked in opulence and the clinking of crystal. It was the annual Montenegro Foundation Gala, a night where the brilliance of the towering chandeliers seemed to compete with the diamonds adorning the necks of the city's elite. Isabella, a vision in a designer gown that shimmered like captured starlight, moved through the throng. Her laughter, a melodic, self-assured sound, mingled with the murmur of voices and the soft strains of a string quartet. The world, it seemed, was her gilded oyster. Manuel, a quiet sentinel in his crisp uniform, remained a discreet shadow, ensuring the immaculate order of the restrooms and corridors, an essential yet invisible cog in the machinery of this extravagant display. In a fleeting moment of boisterous gesticulation, Isabella, a glass of ruby-red Cabernet Sauvignon clutched in her hand, stumbled ever so slightly. The wine, a crimson arc against the dazzling lights, flew from its delicate vessel, spattering like drops of fresh blood across the pristine tuxedo of a formidable tech magnate. A flicker of panic in Isabella's eyes was swiftly extinguished, replaced by a cold, calculating fury, already searching for a convenient scapegoat. Her gaze landed on Manuel, who was approaching with a service trolley, a cloth, and a bucket, his face etched with concern. "You incompetent fool! Look what you've done! Why aren't you paying attention, you refuse!" she shrieked, her voice cutting through the elegant murmur. The truth, clear to any unbiased observer, was that Manuel had been several yards away, but Isabella's wrath demanded a target. With a chilling smile, she ordered him to kneel, right there amidst the hushed gasps and curious stares, not to clean the marble floor, but to scrub the wine from her own impossibly expensive dress using a damp, soiled rag. She watched, her laughter sharp, as she made disparaging remarks about his humble attire, his obvious poverty, and his utter uselessness. Manuel's face burned with a shame so profound it felt like a physical blow. His eyes, desperate to escape the cruel merriment, locked onto the polished marble floor. He inhaled the sharp, acrid scent of spilled wine, mingling with the sterile polish wax, felt the rough, unforgiving texture of the cloth against his trembling fingers, the icy chill of the floor seeping through the thin fabric of his uniform trousers. In the desolate landscape of his mind, only the cherished memory of his late wife, her quiet strength and unwavering dignity, served as a fragile anchor, reminding him of a character that even this gratuitous humiliation could not steal. Isabella's cruelty was not a mere accident of temper. It was a deliberate, almost theatrical display of power, a brutal assertion that for her, some human beings were as utterly expendable as the soiled napkin she contemptuously tossed at Manuel's feet. Back in the present, the courtroom air remained heavy, now charged with the palpable energy of Isabella's sheer obstinacy. Isabella sat on the defendant's bench, a picture of cultivated ennui. Her perfectly crossed leg displayed a pristine Louboutin heel, a ruby-red punctuation mark against the drab decor. Her lips were busy with a stick of mint gum, the subtle yet irritating snap and chew reverberating in the hushed chamber like a tiny, arrogant heartbeat. A fortune in diamonds glittered on her wrist, her opulent watch checked with incessant, impatient flicks of her hand. Her middle-aged lawyer, burdened by a weighty briefcase and an air of quiet resignation, leaned in to whisper, but she waved him away with a regal, dismissive gesture, her eyes fixed on some invisible point beyond the proceedings, as if watching a profoundly uninteresting film. In her mind, victory was a foregone conclusion. Her father's immense wealth was an impenetrable shield, capable of smothering any scandal, silencing any inconvenient truth, perhaps even swaying any judge, or so she fiercely believed. They want money? Just give it to them, and let's be done with this charade. I have brunch scheduled, Isabella thought, a derisive smile playing on her lips, a smile that rarely reached her cold, calculating eyes. From his elevated bench, Judge Caprio missed nothing. His gaze, once merely discerning, now resembled that of a seasoned predator, observing every minute shift in Isabella's posture, every flicker of her expression, every dismissive tick. He betrayed no emotion, his face a masterful mask of seasoned wisdom and profound patience. Yet behind that stoic facade, a razor-sharp mind meticulously peeled back the layers of Isabella's arrogance, mapping the very fissures in her meticulously constructed armor. He listened to the dry testimonies, the procedural accusations, the rote defenses, but his focus lay far beyond mere words, delving into intentions, into the very crucible of character. He could almost taste the cloying sweetness of Isabella's expensive perfume, overpowering in the solemn atmosphere, a jarring contrast to the faint, honest scent of soap and quiet dignity that emanated from Manuel. This entire scene, the judge knew, was a microcosm of a larger, timeless battle, the crude force of hubris against the enduring essence of humanity, and he was there to arbitrate, not with the cold letter of the law, but with the unwavering scales of morality. With a voice that seemed hewn from justice itself, Judge Caprio began his interrogation. There was no haste in his words. each one carefully chosen, like polished river stones. He did not dwell on the trivialities of the incident, the splattered wine, or the material damages. His questions, directed squarely at Isabella, were a philosophical dance, a trap subtly woven to unmask the soul beneath the polished surface. "Ms. Montenegro," the judge began, his voice echoing with authority and serene command, "what value do you place on a man's dignity? What price do you assign to the public shame imposed upon a human being, not for a crime, but for a mere whim?" Isabella, initially, attempted to maintain her posture of disdain. "Really, Your Honor, this is absurd. I've already offered compensation. How much does he want? 10,000? 20,000? I'll pay it. My attorney has already informed him." She offered a condescending smile, as if resolving a trivial matter with her checkbook. Money always smooths things over, she thought, especially for people like him. "Money can buy silence, Ms. Montenegro," the judge retorted, his voice a tone graver. "But can it wash away the stain of humiliation? Can it restore the stolen peace of mind, the trampled honor? And, more importantly, can it teach the value of humility to one who considers herself above all others?" The judge's questions were arrows piercing Isabella's materialistic armor. She tried to argue about her social standing, about the time she was losing, about how Manuel was merely trying to take advantage of the situation. "He's just an employee. It was his job. If he doesn't like it, he can find another one," she exclaimed, irritation beginning to corrode her composure. In her mind, dignity was an empty word, a luxury the poor could not afford. The judge merely watched her, an almost imperceptible glint in his eyes, as she, unaware, dug her own moral grave deeper. Each arrogant answer was another step in her ascent to the precipice, a confession of her superficial character. The judge knew that money was not the currency of this court. It was the soul that stood on trial, and Isabella was offering hers without bidding. The silence within the hollowed chamber thickened, growing almost unbearable, a tangible pressure in the air. Judge Caprio leaned slightly forward on his bench, his gaze, sharp as an obsidian shard, impaling Isabella. For the first time, a flicker of genuine discomfort crossed her carefully composed features under the intensity of that scrutiny. "Miss Montenegro," his voice resonated, no longer a distant thunder, but a pervasive whisper that filled every corner of the room, curling around the ornate columns and the hushed spectators. "This court does not merely concern itself with the cold letter of the law, but with the invisible bonds that connect us, with the debts that transcend the monetary, debts of gratitude, of honor, of shared humanity." He paused, a master conductor holding the note, allowing the weight of his words to settle. His eyes swept across the gallery before returning to Isabella, who now knitted her brow, confusion warring with her ingrained disdain. "Mr. Monroe, whom you so contemptuously dismissed as no one and trash, is hardly a stranger to your esteemed family. He has served the House of Montenegro for over 40 years, not merely as a groundskeeper, but as a silent pillar, a guardian of secrets and of honor." The judge then peeled back the layers of time, revealing a connection that sent Isabella's carefully constructed world spinning off its axis. "Miss, years ago, when your father, the highly respected Mr. Arthur Montenegro, faced a financial scandal that threatened to obliterate his empire and his formidable reputation, it was Mr. Manuel who, with unwavering discretion and loyalty, prevented the exposure of crucial documents, safeguarding your family's honor. In return, your father, in a moment of profound gratitude, made a solemn promise to Mr. Manuel's wife on her deathbed, that he would look after them, that the dignity of that family would never be tarnished under his guardianship." The revelation struck Isabella like a bolt of lightning. Her eyes, once brimming with insolence, now widened, raw with shock. The petulant smile wilted, collapsing inward, and the color drained from her face, leaving her skin a ghastly pale. The rhythm of her gum chewing halted abruptly, frozen in her gaping mouth. A strangled gasp escaped her dry throat. Her father, the all-powerful Arthur Montenegro, indebted, morally, to a mere groundskeeper? Isabella's armor of arrogance didn't merely crack, it shattered into 1,000 glittering, agonizing pieces. Fear, cold and sharp, replaced her previous presumption. It wasn't the fear of legal retribution, but a far more potent dread, the terror of her father's profound disapproval, of having irrevocably sullied the family name in a way that all her inherited wealth could never mend. Dizziness swirled behind her eyes, a wave of nausea churning in her stomach, and cold sweat slicked down her spine. Judge Caprio's gaze now seemed to bore directly into her very soul, tearing away the last vestiges of her carefully constructed facade. Manuel, his eyes still fixed on the scuffed linoleum, allowed himself an almost imperceptible sigh. The truth, in all its devastating glory, had finally been spoken. The judge's intricate web of morality had at last ensnared its prey. The air thinned around Isabella, growing heavy and oppressive. The impact of the revelation struck not just her mind, but her very being, a physical blow that staggered her. Vertigo seized her, the courtroom walls seeming to press in, the faint aroma of old wax and dust now a suffocating shroud. Her lips quivered uncontrollably, and a raw, choked sound, a guttural blend of denial and dawning panic, clawed its way from her throat. Her attorney, a fleeting shadow of concern on his face, reached out, but she recoiled, swatting his hand away with a desperate, almost feral gesture. The judge, his gaze unyielding, continued, his voice devoid of apparent emotion, yet heavy with an unforgiving weight. Mr. Arthur Montenegro, fully apprised of his daughter's actions and the breach of his solemn promise, has been contacted by this court. He has expressed profound shame and, with a heavy heart, communicated his decision to withdraw all financial and social support from Miss Isabella Montenegro. This suspension will remain in effect until such time as she demonstrates a genuine comprehension of the true value of respect and human dignity. Your fortune, your family name, your social standing, every single advantage you so callously wielded as a weapon against Mr. Manuel is now suspended. Each word from the judge was a hammer blow to Isabella's inflated ego. She felt the solid ground beneath her feet dissolve into a terrifying void. Her empire of vanity, so meticulously constructed upon inherited privilege and borrowed wealth, was crumbling, stone by painful stone. The cool, clinical courtroom lights now seemed to blaze with an incandescent fury, starkly illuminating every flaw in her carefully applied makeup, every tear that now trembled on the brink of escape. The courtroom's hushed murmurs swelled into a dissonant chorus of shock and astonishment, a wave of sound from the gallery and the press section. Camera flashes, once mere polite clicks, now exploded in a relentless visual bombardment, capturing her expression of raw, unvarnished horror. She was the unwilling, exposed centerpiece of a scandal her father neither could nor would now attempt to suppress. Her designer handbag, a symbol of her crumbling world, vibrated with silent proof of her social circle's immediate, brutal abandonment. Within her mind, a dizzying maelstrom of terrifying questions began to rage. No credit cards? No car? My apartment? How will I even exist? Who am I, without my name, without my father's shadow? There was no true remorse, only the primal, visceral terror of someone losing every single thing that had ever defined her. Panic was a physical entity, a tightening knot in her stomach, an uncontrollable tremor seizing her limbs. The once arrogant Isabella Montenegro was now a pathetic, utterly impotent figure, brutally confronted with the utter insignificance of her own strength, stripped bare of the impenetrable shield of wealth. Judge Caprio, impassive, observed the complete, agonizing destruction of a young woman's ego. An ego that perhaps needed to be shattered so completely for her to ever hope to rebuild. The lingering silence, heavy with shattered pride, yielded to Judge Caprio's voice, a beacon of serene authority. His unwavering gaze met Isabella's tear-streaked face stripped of hauteur. "Miss Montenegro," he began, his words resonating with finality, "this court seeks not merely a penalty, but a profound lesson, an opportunity to grasp the true essence of diligent work, empathy, and the dignity you so cruelly denied. Character, miss, is not bought. It is painstakingly built, brick by humble brick, through humility and selfless service." The sentence was a sculpted instrument of transformation, a substantial fine from a court-supervised charity fund, and experiential penance. "For 1 year," the judge echoed, "you will perform full-time community service as a custodian at a charitable institution, a center for the elderly or unhoused. You will clean, maintain, and directly assist the needy, living under minimum wage conditions without your privileges, under Mr. Manuel's direct guidance, should you accept." A collective gasp rippled. This sentence was designed to rebuild. The judge continued, his voice a low, philosophical hum. "True wealth resides not in what one possesses, but in what one is, in the capacity to extend a hand and recognize inherent value. This is an invitation, miss, to rediscover the humanity you allowed luxury and arrogance to eclipse, a chance to restore Mr. Manuel's dignity and your own. Gold's luster is fleeting, an unblemished character's radiance eternal." Manuel offered a subtle nod, justice, not triumph, etched on his face. Isabella's mouth hung open, the words a physical weight. No golden exit appeared, only an arduous path. The gavel strike sealed her new reality, the final echo of her old life shattering, the nascent beginning of another. 6 months later, Isabella Montenegro's world was utterly inverted. Opulent luxuries yielded to a simple uniform, her hands calloused by soap and effort. Her hair, once styled, was a plain ponytail. Her makeup-free face, formerly arrogant, now softened by fatigue and newfound sweetness. At the Esperanza Viva Community Center, she swept, scrubbed, and served the elderly. Her body ached, her mind cleared of trivialities. Cleaning scents, once repulsive, now defined her routine. One afternoon, wiping tables, she saw Mr. Manuel, her silent, patient supervisor. His wise eyes, devoid of contempt, met hers. Isabella blushed with shame and respect, nodding softly. "Good morning, Mr. Manuel," her voice, once haughty, now gentle. He simply acknowledged her with a small smile. No words of the past, only a profound, tacit understanding. She often recalled the judge's words, "Character isn't bought, it's built." A quiet pride warmed her, fixing a faucet, or earning an elder's genuine smile. Gold's gleam yielded to sweat's honest sheen, a purpose no luxury offered. The shattered shell of arrogance revealed a robust seed of humility. This epilogue wasn't a fairy tale, but a profound journey of self-discovery. The moral lesson was lived. Ego destruction paved the way for character. That silent encounter affirmed Judge Caprio's justice had brought her to her knees, not in humiliation, but in a deep awakening to humanity.